The snowstorm hit Johnson City, Texas, with a ferocity that nobody had seen in 20 years, turning the dusty cattle town into a frozen wasteland where even the hardiest ranchers struggled to survive. Tessa Cole stumbled through the blinding white chaos, her threadbare dress offering no protection against the biting wind that cut through her like 1,000 tiny knives. She had been walking for hours, maybe days. Time had lost all meaning when every breath felt like it might be her last. Her fingers were numb, her lips cracked and bleeding, and the world had narrowed to nothing but the desperate need to keep moving forward. If she stopped, she would die. She knew that with absolute certainty. She had nothing. The stagecoach that was supposed to take her to San Antonio had broken an axle 15 miles outside of Johnson City, and the driver had told everyone to walk to town or freeze with the wreckage. Most of the passengers had family or friends waiting for them, people who would come looking. Tessa had no one. She was running from a life of servitude in Louisiana, heading west with dreams of starting fresh where nobody knew her name or her past. Now, those dreams seemed as frozen and lifeless as the landscape around her. Her foot caught on something hidden beneath the snow, and she went down hard. The impact drove the air from her lungs, and for a moment she simply lay there, feeling the cold seep through her dress and into her bones. It would be so easy to just close her eyes, to let the snow cover her like a blanket and drift away into whatever came after this world of pain and cold. Then she heard the horse. The sound of hoofbeats was muffled by the snow, but unmistakable. Tessa lifted her head, squinting through the swirling white to see a dark shape materializing out of the storm. A rider, hunched against the wind, leading his horse through the drifts with grim determination. He was tall in the saddle, wrapped in a heavy coat, his hat pulled low against the elements. She tried to call out, but her voice was a weak rasp that the wind snatched away before it could travel more than a few feet. She tried to stand, but her legs refused to obey. All she could do was lie there in the snow and hope that he would see her before it was too late. The rider was almost past her when his horse suddenly shied, dancing sideways and tossing its head. The man spoke to the animal in a low, calm voice, and that was when he saw her. He was off his horse in an instant, dropping to his knees beside her in the snow. "Jesus Christ," he muttered, and even through her delirium, Tessa noticed that his voice was deep and rough like gravel in a stream. "What the hell are you doing out here?" She tried to answer, but all that came out was a weak cough. The man did not wait for an explanation. He scooped her up in his arms as if she weighed nothing at all, and she felt the solid warmth of his body even through his coat. He carried her to his horse, and somehow managed to get them both into the saddle, settling her in front of him and wrapping his arms around her to keep her steady. "There is a lined shack about a quarter mile from here," he said, his breath warm against her ear. "Hold on. Just hold on a little longer." Tessa wanted to tell him that she had been holding on for so long already that she did not know if she had anything left to hold on with. But the warmth of his body was already starting to thaw the frozen core of her, and she found herself leaning back against his chest as his horse plodded forward through the storm. She could feel the steady beat of his heart against her shoulder blade, strong and sure, and something about that rhythm gave her hope that maybe she would survive this after all. The lined shack appeared out of the snow like a mirage, a small rough structure of weathered wood that looked like it might blow away in the next strong gust. But it was shelter, and shelter meant life. The man dismounted and carried her inside, kicking the door shut behind them against the howling wind. The interior was dark and cold, but at least it was dry. He set her down gently on the floor and immediately set about building a fire in the small stone hearth. Tessa watched through half-closed eyes as he worked with quick, efficient movements. He had the fire going in minutes, coaxing the flames to life with dried grass and small sticks before adding larger pieces of wood. The warmth began to spread through the small space, and Tessa felt tears prick at her eyes. She had never been so grateful for something so simple as heat. The man turned to look at her, and for the first time she got a good look at his face in the firelight. He was younger than she had expected, probably not much older than her own 22 years. His face was all hard angles and weathered skin, with a strong jaw covered in several days' worth of dark stubble. His eyes were an unusual shade of gray-green, like storm clouds over the prairie, and they studied her with an intensity that made her breath catch. "Can you stand?" he asked. Tessa tried, but her legs were still not cooperating. She shook her head, frustrated by her own weakness. "That is all right," he said. "You have got frostbite. We need to get you warm, but slowly. Too fast and it will do more harm than good." He moved to the corner of the shack and retrieved a saddle blanket, which he wrapped around her shoulders. Then he went back outside, returning a moment later with his saddlebags and another blanket from his horse. "Your horse," Tessa managed to croak out. "The storm." "There is a lean-to on the side of the shack," he said. "He will be all right, better than we would be without shelter." He knelt beside her and began to examine her hands, his touch surprisingly gentle for such rough-looking fingers. "How long were you out there?" "I do not know," Tessa admitted. "The stagecoach broke down. I walked. I just kept walking." His jaw tightened. "The driver left you." He told everyone to walk to Johnson City. The others had people. I did not. The man looked at her for a long moment, something unreadable passing across his face. Then he nodded and went back to examining her hands. "You are lucky. Another hour and you would have lost fingers, maybe worse." He began to rub her hands between his own, creating friction to help restore circulation. The process was painful, a burning pins and needles sensation that made Tessa gasp, but she bit her lip and endured it. "I am Tessa," she said, needing to break the silence. "Tessa Cole." "Thomas Vance," he replied, not looking up from his work on her hands. "Most people call me Tom." "Thank you, Tom, for saving my life." He glanced up at her then, those storm cloud eyes meeting hers. "Anyone would have done the same. But you are the one who did," Tessa said softly. Tom did not respond to that. He finished with her hands and moved onto her feet, removing her sodden boots and thin stockings. Tessa felt a flush of embarrassment, but there was nothing inappropriate in his touch. He was simply trying to keep her alive. He rubbed her feet with the same careful attention he had given her hands, and gradually feeling began to return to her extremities. The storm raged outside, the wind howling like a living thing trying to get in. Inside the small shack, the fire crackled and popped, filling the space with warmth and the smell of burning wood. Tom pulled out some hardtack and dried beef from his saddlebags and shared it with Tessa, along with water from his canteen. It was not much, but to Tessa it tasted like the finest meal she had ever eaten. "What were you doing out in this?" Tessa asked between small bites. "Most people would have sheltered before it got this bad." "I was checking on the herd," Tom said. "I am a ranch hand for the Rocking V, about 10 miles north of Johnson City. The boss wanted someone to make sure the cattle in the south pasture had access to the windbreak before the storm hit." He looked at the door, where snow was starting to pile up against the frame. "I finished just as it really started coming down, was heading back when I found you." "You could have ridden past me," Tessa said. "You could have missed me entirely in all that white." "But I did not," Tom said simply. "And here we are." Here they were indeed. Trapped in a lined shack in the middle of a snowstorm, two strangers bound together by circumstance and the simple human need to survive. Tessa pulled the blanket tighter around her shoulders and stared into the flames, wondering what twist of fate had brought her to this moment. "Where were you headed?" Tom asked, before the stagecoach broke down. "San Antonio," Tessa said. "I heard there was work there for women who can sew. I am good with a needle. Long way from Louisiana." Tessa looked at him sharply. "How did you know I am from Louisiana?" "Your accent," Tom said with a slight shrug. "Faint, but it is there. And you have got that look about you, like you are running from something." Tessa bristled. "I am not running from anything. I am running towards something. There is a difference, if you say so." They sat in silence for a while, the only sounds the crackling of the fire and the howling of the wind. Tessa found herself studying Tom when she thought he was not looking. He had a stillness about him, a quiet confidence that came from someone comfortable in his own skin. His hands were scarred and calloused, the hands of a man who made his living through hard physical labor. But there was intelligence in his eyes, a sharpness that suggested there was more to him than just muscle and determination. "What about you?" Tessa asked finally. "How did you end up working on a ranch in Texas?" "Born here," Tom said. "My father was a ranch hand too before he died. Broke his neck when a green horse threw him. I was 15. Had to quit school and go to work to help my mother keep food on the table." He fed another piece of wood to the fire. "She passed 3 years ago. Fever. After that, there was not much reason to do anything but work." "I am sorry," Tessa said, and she meant it. She knew what it was like to lose everyone. Tom nodded but did not elaborate. Instead, he stood and checked the door, brushing away some of the snow that had accumulated. "This storm is not letting up. We are going to be here a while. How long? Could be a day, could be 3. Hard to say with weather like this." Tessa felt a flutter of panic. "But I have nothing. No food, no money, nothing to trade. I cannot pay you back for helping me." Tom turned to look at her, his expression unreadable in the firelight. "I am not asking for payment, but I should contribute something. I should be able to give something back." He crossed the space between them and knelt down beside her, close enough that she could see the flecks of gold in his gray-green eyes. "You do not owe me anything, Tessa Cole. I did not pull you out of that snow expecting payment. I did it because it was the right thing to do." "I have nothing," Tessa whispered, feeling the weight of those words like stones in her chest. It was true in so many ways. She had no possessions beyond the dress on her back and the few coins sewn into the hem of her skirt. She had no family, no friends, no prospects. She was completely and utterly alone in the world. Tom reached out and gently lifted her chin so she had to meet his eyes. "You have me," he said quietly. "For as long as this storm lasts, you have me, and that is going to be enough to keep you alive." Tessa felt something crack open inside her chest, some frozen place that had been locked away for so long she had forgotten it existed. Tears spilled down her cheeks, and she could not stop them. Tom did not try to shush her or tell her everything would be all right. He simply pulled his blanket from his own shoulders and wrapped it around her along with the one she already had, cocooning her in warmth. "Get some rest," he said. "I will keep the fire going." "You need to sleep too," Tessa protested. "I will, in a bit. Right now, you need it more than I do." Tessa wanted to argue, but exhaustion was pulling at her like a riptide. The warmth of the fire, the security of the shelter, and the simple presence of another human being who cared whether she lived or died all combined to drag her down into sleep. Her last conscious thought was that Tom Vance had the kindest eyes she had ever seen. When she woke, the fire had burned down to embers, and the shack was filled with the gray light of dawn, or maybe afternoon. It was hard to tell with the snow still falling outside. Tom was sitting with his back against the wall, his hat pulled low over his eyes, apparently sleeping. Tessa watched the steady rise and fall of his chest, and felt a strange warmth that had nothing to do with the blankets wrapped around her. She tried to sit up without waking him, but the movement made him stir. He pushed his hat back and looked at her, instantly alert in the way of someone used to being on guard. "How are you feeling?" he asked. "Better," Tessa said, and she was surprised to find it was true. Her hands and feet still ached, but the bone-deep cold had retreated. "Thank you for keeping watch." "Someone had to," Tom said with a slight smile. It was the first time she had seen him smile, and it transformed his face from merely handsome to something that made her heart skip a beat. He built up the fire again, and they shared more of his meager supplies for breakfast. The storm continued to rage outside, showing no signs of letting up. Tom went out twice during the day to check on his horse and bring back more firewood from the small stack beside the lean-to. Each time he came back in, he was covered in snow and shivering, but he never complained. They talked to pass the time. Tessa told him about growing up in Louisiana, though she carefully edited the parts about the family that had taken her in after her parents died in a cholera outbreak. She did not mention how they had treated her more like an indentured servant than a ward, or how she had finally run away in the dead of night with nothing but the clothes on her back and a few stolen coins. Some stories were too raw to share with a stranger, no matter how kind his eyes. Tom told her about life on the ranch, about the rhythm of the seasons and the hard work of keeping cattle alive in the harsh Texas climate. He spoke about his horse, a buckskin gelding named Dust, with obvious affection. He talked about the other ranch hands and the cook, who made the best beans in 3 counties. His words painted a picture of a life that was hard but honest, full of simple pleasures and the satisfaction of a good day's work. As the hours passed, Tessa found herself drawn to Tom in a way she had never experienced before. It was not just gratitude for saving her life, though she felt that keenly. It was something deeper, something that sparked in her chest every time their eyes met across the fire. She tried to tell herself it was just the circumstances, the forced intimacy of being trapped together in a small space. But she knew in her heart it was more than that. Night fell again, and Tom insisted that Tessa take both blankets while he kept watch by the fire. She protested, but he was immovable on the subject. "You are still recovering," he said firmly. "You need the warmth more than I do." "Then share them with me," Tessa heard herself say before she could think better of it. "There is enough for both of us if we stay close." Tom looked at her for a long moment, something unreadable flickering in his eyes. "That would not be proper." "Proper?" Tessa almost laughed. "We are trapped in a lined shack in the middle of a blizzard. I think propriety went out the window when you had to rub feeling back into my feet." "Tessa, I am not suggesting anything improper," she said, feeling heat rise to her cheeks. "I am suggesting that we both stay warm and both get some sleep. That is all. We can keep our own space, just share the blankets." Tom hesitated, and Tessa could see him weighing the practicality of the suggestion against his sense of what was appropriate. Finally, he nodded. "All right, but you tell me if you are uncomfortable and I will move." They arranged themselves on the floor near the fire, lying on their sides with the blankets pulled over both of them. Tom kept a respectful distance between them, but Tessa could feel the heat radiating from his body. It was strange and comforting all at once to have another person so close. She had been alone for so long that she had forgotten what it felt like to have someone near. "Tom," she whispered into the darkness. "Yeah, why did you really stop? When you saw me in the snow, you could have thought I was just a snowdrift or a dead animal. You could have kept riding." She felt him shift slightly behind her. "My horse saw you first," he said. "If Dust had not shied, I probably would have missed you entirely, but once I saw you lying there." He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice was rough with emotion. "I have seen death, Tessa." I have seen what it looks like when someone gives up and lets the world take them. And I saw that you were fighting. Even lying in the snow, barely conscious, you were still fighting. I could not ride past that. I could not leave you there to die alone." Tessa felt tears prick at her eyes again. "I was fighting," she whispered. "I have been fighting for so long." "I know," Tom said softly. "I can see it in you. That is why I said you have me, because someone who fights that hard deserves to have someone in their corner." Tessa did not trust herself to speak. Instead, she reached back and found Tom's hand, lacing her fingers through his. He squeezed gently, and they lay like that in the firelight, two people who had been alone finding unexpected solace in each other's presence. The storm blew itself out during the night. When Tessa woke the next morning, sunlight was streaming through the gaps in the walls, and the world outside had gone quiet. Tom was already up, feeding the fire and organizing his gear. "Storm is over," he said when he saw she was awake. "We should be able to make it back to Johnson City today." Tessa felt an unexpected pang of disappointment. She knew they could not stay in the line shack forever, but part of her wanted to hold onto this strange bubble of intimacy they had created. Out there in the real world, Tom was a ranch hand, and she was a woman with no prospects and no future. Here in this small space, they had just been two people keeping each other alive. They shared the last of Tom's supplies for breakfast, and then he went to check on Dust and prepare for the journey. Tessa stood and tested her legs, relieved to find that they were steady beneath her. Her hands and feet still ached, but she was alive. That was more than she had dared hope for 2 days ago. Tom brought Dust around to the front of the shack, and Tessa was surprised to see that the horse looked none the worse for wear despite the storm. Tom had clearly taken good care of the animal during their ordeal. "You ready?" Tom asked, extending a hand to help her mount. Tessa took his hand and let him boost her up into the saddle. He swung up behind her, settling her in front of him just as he had done when he first found her. This time, though, Tessa was fully conscious and aware of every point of contact between them. She could feel the solid strength of his chest against her back, the warmth of his arms as they came around her to hold the reins. It made her heart race in a way that had nothing to do with fear or cold. They set out across the snow-covered landscape, Dust picking his way carefully through the drifts. The sun was brilliant on the white expanse, making everything look clean and new. Tessa had never seen anything so beautiful. It was hard to believe that this peaceful landscape had nearly killed her just 2 days before. Johnson City appeared on the horizon after about an hour of riding. It was a small town, just one main street lined with wooden buildings, but to Tessa, it looked like paradise. Smoke rose from chimneys, and she could see people moving about despite the snow. Life going on, just as it always did. Tom guided Dust down the main street, past the general store and the saloon and the hotel. People stopped to stare at them as they passed, and Tessa felt suddenly self-conscious. She must look a sight, her dress rumpled and dirty, her hair a tangled mess. And here she was riding through town in front of a man on his horse like it was the most natural thing in the world. Tom stopped in front of the hotel and helped her down. "You can get a room here," he said. "Tell them Tom Vance sent you and to put it on the Rocking V account. The ranch has credit at most of the businesses in town." "I cannot let you pay for a room," Tessa protested. "You have already done so much. You need a place to stay while you figure out what comes next," Tom said firmly. "Consider it part of keeping you alive. My job is not done until I know you are safe and settled." Tessa wanted to argue, but the truth was she had nowhere else to go. The few coins sewn into her hem would barely buy her a meal, much less a room. She swallowed her pride and nodded. "I will pay you back, somehow." "We will worry about that later," Tom said. He tipped his hat to her, and for a moment Tessa thought he was going to ride away. But then he seemed to think better of it. "I will be back in town tomorrow to check on you. Make sure you are all right." Something warm bloomed in Tessa's chest. "I would like that." Tom nodded, his expression unreadable. Then he turned dust and rode off down the street, leaving Tessa standing in front of the hotel watching him go. The hotel proprietor, a stout woman with kind eyes, took one look at Tessa and immediately ushered her inside. True to his word, Tom's name held weight in Johnson City, and the woman set Tessa up in a small but clean room on the second floor without asking for payment up front. She also provided hot water for a bath and promised to have Tessa's dress cleaned and mended. Tessa sank into the hot water with a sigh of pure bliss. She scrubbed away the dirt and the sweat of her ordeal, watching the water turn cloudy and gray. When she finally emerged, pink and clean, she felt almost human again. The hotel woman had left a simple cotton nightgown for her to wear while her dress was being cleaned, and Tessa wrapped herself in it gratefully. She sat on the edge of the bed and looked out the window at the town below. From here, she could see most of Johnson City. It was not much, but it was more than she had had 2 days ago. She was alive, she was warm, and she had a roof over her head. And tomorrow, Tom Vance would come back to check on her. The thought made her smile despite everything. She knew she should not let herself feel anything for Tom beyond gratitude. He had saved her life out of basic human decency, not because he felt anything special for her. But she could not help the way her heart lifted at the thought of seeing him again. Could not help the way his words echoed in her mind. "You have me." Tessa slept deeply that night, her body finally able to fully relax knowing she was safe and warm. She woke to the sound of church bells ringing and realized it must be Sunday. The hotel woman brought her breakfast in bed, scrambled eggs and bacon and fresh bread with butter. Tessa ate every bite, marveling at how good simple food could taste when you had been so close to starving. Her dress was returned to her in the afternoon, cleaned and neatly mended. The hotel woman had done an excellent job, and Tessa felt tears prick at her eyes at the kindness. She thanked the woman profusely and got dressed, feeling more like herself in her own clothes. She was sitting in the small lobby of the hotel when Tom arrived. He had cleaned up too, she noticed. He wore a fresh shirt and his hair was damp, as if he had recently bathed. He held his hat in his hands and looked almost nervous as he approached her. "Miss Cole," he said formally, "you are looking much improved." "Thanks to you," Tessa said, standing. "Please call me Tessa." "After everything, I think we are past formalities." Tom smiled at that. "Tessa, then, have you eaten?" The hotel provided breakfast, but I would not say no to supper if you are offering. There is a place down the street that serves decent food, nothing fancy, but it fills the belly. They walked together to the restaurant, a small establishment called Molly's Kitchen. The interior was warm and smelled like roasted meat and fresh bread. A few other patrons were scattered at tables, but it was not crowded. Tom led her to a table in the back and pulled out her chair before seating himself across from her. A tired-looking waitress came to take their order, and Tom ordered pot roast with vegetables for both of them, without asking what Tessa wanted. Normally, that might have annoyed her, but she was too hungry to care, and besides, pot roast sounded wonderful. "So," Tom said once the waitress had left, "have you given any thought to what you are going to do next?" Tessa sighed. "I need to find work. I cannot stay at the hotel indefinitely, especially on your credit, but I do not know what kind of work there is in Johnson City for someone like me." "You said you can sew?" "Yes. I am good with a needle. I can mend anything and I can make dresses from patterns. I worked as a seamstress back in." She trailed off, not wanting to talk about her past. Tom nodded as if he understood. "There is a dress shop in town. Mrs. Patterson runs it. She is always complaining about having too much work and not enough help. I could introduce you if you like. You would do that for me." "I would," Tom said simply. "You need work and she needs help. It makes sense." The food arrived and they ate in comfortable silence for a while. The pot roast was every bit as good as it smelled, and Tessa savored every bite. She could not remember the last time she had eaten 2 decent meals in the same day. "Tom," she said when she had finished most of her food, "why are you being so kind to me? You do not know me. I could be anyone. I could be running from the law or have a terrible past or any number of things." Tom set down his fork and looked at her seriously. "I figure everyone has got a past, Tessa. Most folks out here are running from something or towards something. That does not make them bad people. It just makes them human." He leaned back in his chair. "Besides, I am a pretty good judge of character, and my gut tells me you are a good person who has had a hard time of it. Am I wrong?" "No," Tessa admitted. "You are not wrong." "Then that is all I need to know." After supper, Tom walked her back to the hotel. The sun was setting, painting the snow-covered town in shades of orange and pink. It was beautiful in a way that made Tessa's chest ache. "I will come by tomorrow morning," Tom said when they reached the hotel steps. "We will go see Mrs. Patterson together." "You do not have to do that. I am sure you have work at the ranch." "I have a day off coming to me," Tom said, "and I want to make sure you get settled. Besides," he added with a slight smile, "I kind of feel responsible for you now, cannot just leave you to fend for yourself." Tessa laughed. "I have been fending for myself for a long time, Tom Vance, but I will admit it is nice to have help for a change." Tom tipped his hat to her. "Good night, Tessa." "Good night, Tom." She watched him walk away down the street, his tall form eventually disappearing into the gathering dusk. Then she went inside, her heart feeling lighter than it had in months, maybe years. True to his word, Tom arrived at the hotel the next morning just after breakfast. Together they walked to Mrs. Patterson's dress shop, a neat little building near the end of the main street. The proprietor was a woman of about 50 with sharp eyes and capable hands. She looked Tessa up and down appraisingly when Tom made the introduction. "So you are the girl Tom pulled out of the snow," Mrs. Patterson said. "Heard about that. Lucky for you, Tom Vance has a good heart and a better horse." "Yes, madam," Tessa said. "I am very grateful. And you say you can sew?" "Yes, madam. I can mend and alter, and I can make dresses from patterns." Mrs. Patterson pulled out a piece of fabric with a torn seam. "Show me." Tessa took the fabric and examined it. The tear was in an awkward place, but she could see how to fix it so the mend would be nearly invisible. Mrs. Patterson provided her with a needle and thread, and Tessa set to work. Her fingers moved with practiced ease, making small, neat stitches that pulled the fabric back together perfectly. Mrs. Patterson examined the finished work and nodded approvingly. "You do good work. I can offer you $2 a week, plus room and board in the back room. I live upstairs, so I will be able to keep an eye on things. Hours are long and the work is steady, but I treat my employees fair." "What do you say?" Tessa's heart leapt. $2 a week was not much, but it was enough to start saving. And room and board meant she would not have to worry about where she would sleep or where her next meal would come from. It was more than she had dared hope for. "I say yes, Mrs. Patterson. Thank you. When can I start?" "Right now, if you are able. I have got 3 dresses that need hemming and a coat that needs the lining replaced. The sooner you start, the sooner we can get caught up." Tessa looked at Tom, who was watching her with an expression of quiet satisfaction. "I should get my things from the hotel." "I will help you," Tom offered. They walked back to the hotel together, and Tessa gathered her few possessions, which did not take long since she still had almost nothing. Tom settled her account with the hotel proprietor, and then they walked back to the dress shop. Mrs. Patterson showed Tessa to the back room, which was small but clean, with a narrow bed, a washstand, and a small chest of drawers. To Tessa, it looked like paradise. "Thank you," she said to Tom once Mrs. Patterson had left them alone. "For everything. I do not know how I will ever repay you." "You do not owe me anything," Tom said for what felt like the 100th time, but then his expression softened. "But if you want to repay me, you can have supper with me again. Tomorrow night, if you are free." Tessa's heart skipped a beat. "Are you asking to court me, Tom Vance?" Tom looked flustered for the first time since she had met him. "I guess I am. If that is all right with you. I know we have not known each other long, but I would like to get to know you better, if you are willing." "I am willing," Tessa said softly. "Very willing." Tom's face broke into a genuine smile, and Tessa thought her heart might burst from the warmth of it. "Tomorrow night, then. I will pick you up at 6. He left, and Tessa stood in her small room feeling like she was floating. In the span of less than a week, she had gone from dying in a snowstorm to having a job and a place to live and a good man who wanted to court her. It felt like a dream, like something that could not possibly be real. But when she pinched herself, she did not wake up, Mrs. Patterson put her to work immediately, and Tessa was grateful for the distraction. She threw herself into the sewing, losing herself in the familiar rhythm of needle and thread. The work was soothing, and it felt good to be productive again, to be useful. Over the next few weeks, Tessa settled into a routine. She worked long hours at the dress shop, learning Mrs. Patterson's preferences and building a reputation for quality work. The women of Johnson City began to request her specifically for difficult alterations, and Mrs. Patterson raised her pay to $2.50 a week, and every few days, Tom would come to town and they would have supper together. Sometimes they would go to Molly's kitchen. Sometimes they would just walk through the town, talking about everything and nothing. Tessa learned about Tom's childhood on a small ranch outside of Austin, about his dreams of one day owning his own spread. Tom learned about Tessa's love of books, about how she taught herself to read by candlelight, about her hope to one day have a home of her own where she could feel truly safe. With each passing day, Tessa found herself falling more deeply for Tom. It was not just his kindness or his steady presence. It was the way he listened when she talked, really listened, as if her words mattered. It was the way he made her laugh with his dry observations about ranch life. It was the way he looked at her sometimes, like she was the most precious thing in the world. But they had not yet shared more than a chaste kiss on the cheek, and Tessa was starting to wonder if Tom would ever take that next step. She knew he was being respectful, but part of her wished he would be a little less respectful and a little more bold. Spring came to Texas with a rush of wildflowers and green grass. The snow that had nearly killed Tessa melted away, leaving the land fresh and renewed. Tom invited her to a barn dance at the Rocking V Ranch, and Tessa spent days making herself a new dress for the occasion. It was the first dress she had made for herself in years, a simple but pretty design in soft blue cotton that brought out her eyes. Tom's face when he saw her in the new dress made all the effort worthwhile. His eyes widened, and he actually stammered a bit when he complimented her, which Tessa found endearing. The barn dance was everything Tessa had hoped for and more. The barn had been cleaned and decorated with paper lanterns, and a small band played lively tunes on fiddle and guitar. Tom introduced her to the other ranch hands and their families, and everyone welcomed her warmly. It seemed that Tom's rescue of her had become something of a legend in the area, and people wanted to meet the girl who had survived the blizzard. Tom was not much of a dancer, but he tried his best, leading her through reels and waltzes with determined concentration. Tessa laughed at his earnest efforts, and by the end of the night they had both loosened up enough to actually enjoy themselves. As the dance was winding down, Tom led her outside for some fresh air. The night was warm and clear, the sky full of stars. They walked a little way from the barn to where they could hear the music but have some privacy. "Tessa," Tom said, turning to face her, "I need to tell you something." Tessa's heart started to beat faster. "What is it?" "I know we have not been courting for very long, just a couple of months. But I need you to know that I have feelings for you. Real feelings. You are the first thing I think about when I wake up and the last thing I think about before I sleep. And I know that might sound foolish, but it is the truth." Tessa felt tears prick at her eyes. "It does not sound foolish. It sounds wonderful, because I feel the same way about you, Tom. I have been trying to be practical about this, but I cannot help it. I am in love with you." Tom's face lit up like the sun. "You love me?" "I do," Tessa whispered. "I love you, Tom Vance." Tom pulled her into his arms and kissed her, really kissed her for the first time. It was everything Tessa had been dreaming about and more. His lips were warm and firm, and he kissed her like she was precious, like she mattered. When they finally broke apart, they were both breathless. "I love you too," Tom said, resting his forehead against hers. "I think I have loved you since that first night in the line shack when you took my hand in the dark." They stood there under the stars, wrapped in each other's arms, and Tessa felt a happiness so profound it almost frightened her. She had spent so much of her life just trying to survive that she had forgotten what it felt like to truly live. But Tom made her want to live, to hope, to dream of a future that was bright instead of just bearable. As summer arrived, Tom and Tessa's relationship deepened. Tom was working hard to save money, and he finally confided in Tessa that he had been putting aside every spare dollar for years with the goal of buying his own ranch. He had found a piece of property about 20 miles south of Johnson City, 160 acres with a good creek and decent grazing land. It was not much, but it was a start. He just needed a little more money to make the down payment. Tessa, meanwhile, had been saving too. She had been sending most of her pay to Mrs. Patterson to hold for her, and she now had almost $50 put away. It was more money than she had ever had in her life, and it represented security and independence. But when Tom told her about the ranch, she knew what she wanted to do with it. "Use my savings," she told him one evening as they sat on the porch of the dress shop. "Use my money to help buy the ranch." Tom looked horrified. "I cannot take your money, Tessa. You have worked hard for that. And you have worked hard for your savings too," Tessa pointed out. "But together we have enough. And if we are going to have a future together, Tom, then that ranch is part of that future." "Tessa Cole, are you proposing to me?" Tom asked, a smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "Maybe I am," Tessa said, feeling bold. "Unless you would rather do the proposing." Tom got down on one knee right there on the porch, taking her hand in his. "Tessa Cole, would you do me the honor of becoming my wife? I do not have much to offer you except hard work and a small ranch and a heart that belongs completely to you. But if that is enough, I promise to spend the rest of my life making you happy." "That is more than enough," Tessa said through happy tears. "Yes, Tom, yes, I will marry you." They were married a month later in the small church in Johnson City. Mrs. Patterson stood up as Tessa's witness, and one of Tom's fellow ranch hands stood up for him. Tessa wore a new dress she had made herself, cream-colored with lace at the collar and cuffs. Tom wore his best clothes and looked so handsome that Tessa could hardly believe he was hers. The ceremony was simple but heartfelt. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Tom kissed her so thoroughly that some of the older ladies in attendance actually gasped. Tessa did not care. She was married to the man she loved, and nothing else mattered. They spent their wedding night in the hotel where Tessa had stayed after the blizzard, which felt fitting somehow. It was the place where her new life had truly begun. Tom was gentle and patient with her, and Tessa felt herself falling even more deeply in love with him as they learned each other in the most intimate way. The next morning, they set out for their new ranch. Tom had already used their combined savings to make the down payment, and the property was officially theirs. It was not much to look at yet. There was a small house, really more of a cabin, that needed work. There was a barn that was solid but needed a new roof. There was a lot of land and a lot of potential, but it was going to take years of hard work to turn it into something prosperous. Tessa did not care. She stood in front of that little cabin and felt a surge of joy so powerful it brought tears to her eyes. This was hers, theirs, a home. A real home where she was wanted and loved and belonged. "What do you think?" Tom asked, coming to stand beside her. "I think it is perfect," Tessa said, leaning into his side. "I think it is the most beautiful thing I have ever seen." Tom laughed and kissed the top of her head. "You are seeing it through the eyes of love. It needs a lot of work." "Then we will work," Tessa said simply. "Together." And work they did. Tom continued to work at the Rocking V for a steady income while they got the ranch started. Tessa took in sewing from women in the area, working from their small cabin to bring in extra money. Every spare moment was spent improving the property. They fixed the roof on the barn. They whitewashed the cabin inside and out. They planted a garden and bought a few chickens. Tom bought 3 heifers and a bull with the goal of slowly building a herd. It was hard work, harder than anything Tessa had ever done. But it was good work, the kind that left her tired but satisfied at the end of each day. And she was doing it with Tom, which made all the difference. They would collapse into bed each night, exhausted and sore, and Tom would pull her close and tell her he loved her. And Tessa would think that she had never been happier. Their first winter on the ranch was difficult. Money was tight, and there were times when they ate beans for days on end because it was all they could afford. But they had each other, and they had their home, and somehow that was enough. When it snowed, Tom would pull Tessa close and remind her of that first blizzard, when they had been strangers huddled together for warmth. Now they were husband and wife, building a life together. "You ever regret it?" Tessa asked him one night as they lay in bed listening to the wind howl outside. "Marrying me, I mean. Taking on the responsibility of a wife when you were just barely getting by on your own." Tom turned to her, his eyes serious in the lamplight. "I have never regretted a single moment since I found you in that snow, Tessa Vance. You are the best thing that ever happened to me. This ranch, this life, it would not mean anything without you to share it with." "I love you," Tessa whispered. "I love you too," Tom said, kissing her softly. Always. Spring brought new hope and new challenges. One of the heifers gave birth to a healthy calf, which felt like a blessing. But then a fence broke and 2 of their chickens got killed by a fox, which felt like a curse. Such was the nature of ranch life, Tom told her. "You took the good with the bad and kept moving forward." Tessa discovered she was pregnant in early summer. She had suspected for a few weeks, but she waited to tell Tom until she was sure. When she finally shared the news, Tom picked her up and spun her around, laughing like a child. Then he set her down gently, suddenly worried that he might have hurt her or the baby. "I am not made of glass," Tessa said, laughing at his expression. "I am pregnant, not ill." But Tom was extra gentle with her anyway, insisting that she not do any heavy work around the ranch. Tessa rolled her eyes at his overprotectiveness, but secretly loved it. She had never had anyone care about her well-being the way Tom did. The pregnancy was relatively easy, and Tessa continued to take in sewing work almost until the end. Mrs. Patterson came out from town a few times to check on her, bringing baby clothes she had made and offering advice. Tom was attentive and loving, talking to her belly at night and feeling for the baby's kicks. Their son was born on a cold February morning, almost exactly 2 years after Tom had found Tessa in the snow. The birth was long and difficult, and there were moments when Tessa was not sure she would survive it. But Tom was with her the whole time, holding her hand and telling her she was strong, she could do this. And finally, after what felt like an eternity, she heard the beautiful sound of her baby crying. "It is a boy," the midwife announced, placing the squirming bundle in Tessa's arms. "A healthy boy." Tessa looked down at her son, at his tiny, perfect face and his shock of dark hair, and felt a love so overwhelming it took her breath away. Tom leaned over her shoulder, his eyes shining with tears. "He is perfect," Tom whispered, "just like his mother." They named him Theodore, after Tom's father, with the middle name of James after the grandfather Tessa had never known. Teddy, as they immediately started calling him, was a good baby, healthy and strong. He had Tom's eyes and Tessa's smile, and he quickly became the center of their universe. Life settled into a new rhythm with a baby in the house. Tom continued to work the ranch, and Tessa juggled caring for Teddy with her sewing work. It was exhausting, but it was also fulfilling in a way Tessa had never experienced. She would watch Tom playing with Teddy, making silly faces to get him to laugh, and think about how far she had come from that desperate girl dying in the snow. The ranch slowly prospered. Tom was able to quit his job at the Rocking V and work their own land full-time. They added more cattle and bought a second horse. Tom built a proper addition onto the cabin, giving them a real bedroom and a separate room for Teddy. Tessa's sewing business grew by word of mouth, and she was soon making almost as much as Tom brought in from the cattle. When Teddy was 3, Tessa discovered she was pregnant again. This time it was a girl, born in the middle of a thunderstorm with much less drama than Teddy's birth. They named her Rose, and she was a peaceful baby with a sweet disposition. Tom was besotted with his daughter, carrying her around everywhere and singing to her in his rough, off-key voice. The years passed in a blur of hard work and simple joys. The ranch continued to grow. Tom hired a ranch hand to help with the work, a young man named Samuel who reminded Tessa a bit of Tom at that age, full of determination and dreams. Teddy started school in Johnson City, riding in with Tom once a week to attend classes. Rose grew into a chatty, curious little girl who followed her father everywhere. Tessa stood on the porch of their home one evening, watching the sun set over the land that was theirs. The cabin had become a proper house now, with multiple rooms and a wide front porch. The barn was sturdy and well-maintained. The fences were in good repair. The garden was lush and productive, and in the distance, she could see their herd grazing peacefully in the golden light. Tom came to stand beside her, slipping an arm around her waist. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "About how far we have come," Tessa said, leaning into him. "About that night in the line shack when I told you I had nothing and you said I had you. You have always had me," Tom said softly. "From the moment I saw you fighting to survive in that snow, you had me." "And you have me," Tessa replied. "Always." They stood there together as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Teddy and Rose were inside, arguing about something in the way that siblings do. The cattle were lowing softly in the distance. A breeze rustled through the grass, bringing the smell of wildflowers and earth. It was not a perfect life. There were still hard times, still struggles and setbacks. But it was their life, built together through love and determination and the simple choice to not give up. Tessa thought about the girl she had been, desperate and alone, and marveled at the woman she had become. A wife, a mother, a businesswoman, a rancher. All because one good man had seen her in the snow and decided she was worth saving. "Thank you," she whispered to Tom, "for everything." "Thank you for saying yes," Tom replied. "To sharing my blanket that night, to sharing my life, to sharing all of this." He gestured at the ranch spread out before them. "I would do it all again," Tessa said. "Every hard moment, every struggle, because it all led to this, to us, to our family." Tom kissed her temple. "I love you, Tessa Vance." "I love you too, Tom Vance. Always." As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, they went inside to their children, to the warm home they had built together. Outside, the wind whispered through the grass, carrying with it the promise of tomorrow. And Tessa knew with absolute certainty that whatever challenges tomorrow might bring, they would face them together. Just as they always had, ever since that snowy night when a cowboy shared his blanket with a stranger, and two lost souls found each other in the wilderness. Years continued to roll by in their steady rhythm. Teddy grew tall and strong, taking after his father in build and temperament. By the time he was 15, he could work the ranch as well as any grown man, and he had his father's way with horses. Rose, now 12, showed more interest in her mother's sewing business than in ranch work, and Tessa happily taught her daughter the skills that had once saved her own life. Then came the surprise of another baby when Tessa was 38 and Tom was 40. They had thought their family was complete, but life had other plans. This pregnancy was harder than the previous two, and Tom worried constantly. But Tessa was as strong as ever, and she gave birth to another boy, whom they named Daniel. Daniel was a joy from the start, a happy baby who grew into an adventurous child. He was the perfect completion to their family, the unexpected blessing that reminded them that life still held surprises. The ranch had become one of the most successful in the area. Tom's reputation for honest dealing and quality cattle had spread, and buyers came from as far as Fort Worth to purchase his stock. Tessa's sewing business had evolved into something more, with Rose helping her create original dress designs that were becoming popular with the wealthier women in the region. They even shipped orders to San Antonio and Austin. Tom and Tessa celebrated their 20th wedding anniversary with a party at the ranch. It seemed like the entire town of Johnson City turned out, along with ranchers and their families from all over the county. Mrs. Patterson, now elderly but still sharp as a tack, made the trip out to celebrate with them. She pulled Tessa aside at one point during the party. "I knew you were special the moment Tom brought you to my shop," Mrs. Patterson said, "but I never imagined you would accomplish so much. You have built something remarkable here, Tessa. You should be proud." "I could not have done any of it without Tom," Tessa said, watching her husband across the yard where he was talking to a group of ranchers. Even after 20 years, the sight of him still made her heart skip a beat. "That is what makes it so special," Mrs. Patterson said with a knowing smile. "You two are true partners. That is rarer than you might think." As the party wound down and the guests departed, Tom and Tessa found themselves alone on the porch once again, their favorite spot for quiet moments. The children were all asleep inside, worn out from the festivities. 20 years, Tom mused. "Sometimes it feels like yesterday that I found you in that snow. Other times it feels like you have been part of my life forever." "Both are true," Tessa said. "That is the strange thing about love. It makes time feel elastic." Tom pulled her close and they swayed gently to music only they could hear. "If I could go back and do it all again," Tom said, "I would not change a single thing, except maybe I would have kissed you sooner." Tessa laughed. "You were being respectful." "I was being a fool," Tom said with a grin. "But you loved me anyway." "I did, I do, I always will." They stood there together under the stars, just as they had so many times before. The ranch was quiet around them, peaceful in the way that spoke of hard work and honest living. This was home. This was family. This was everything Tessa had ever dreamed of during those long years when she had nothing and no one. More years passed. Teddy married a girl from Johnson City, a rancher's daughter named Catherine, and they built a house on the far end of the property. Tom deeded them 50 acres as a wedding gift, and Teddy started his own small operation. Rose married a banker from Austin, a kind man named Henry who appreciated her artistic talents and encouraged her to pursue her dressmaking on a larger scale. Daniel, true to his adventurous nature, announced at 18 that he wanted to join the Texas Rangers, and though it nearly broke Tessa's heart, she and Tom supported his choice. Tom and Tessa became grandparents, then grandparents again. Teddy and Catherine had 3 children, giving the ranch new life and energy. Rose and Henry had 2 daughters, and Rose's dressmaking business became so successful that she opened a shop in Austin with her mother's designs as the foundation. Through it all, Tom and Tessa remained each other's constant. They worked the ranch together, though as they aged, they relied more on hired help and Teddy's assistance. They celebrated births and mourned losses. They weathered droughts and good years, illness and health, joy and sorrow. And through everything, they had each other. On the 25th anniversary of finding each other in the snow, Tom surprised Tessa with a trip. He arranged for Teddy to watch the ranch, and he took Tessa to the old line shack where they had spent those first crucial days together. It had been maintained by the Rocking V over the years, but it was essentially unchanged. They stood inside the small structure, remembering. "This is where it all began," Tom said softly. "This is where I fell in love with you." "I think I fell in love with you the moment you wrapped that blanket around me," Tessa said. "When you told me I had you, no one had ever said anything like that to me before. And no one ever will again," Tom said, pulling her close. "Because you are mine, and I am yours, and that is how it will be until the day I die and beyond." Tom pulled out the very blanket he had shared with her that night. He had kept it all these years, a tangible reminder of where their story began. He spread it on the floor, just as he had done 25 years ago, and they sat down on it together. "I have spent my whole life trying to be worthy of you," Tom said, "trying to give you the life you deserve." "You gave me that the moment you stopped in the snow," Tessa said, taking his weathered, work-worn hands in hers. "You gave me hope. You gave me a reason to keep fighting. You gave me love. Everything else has just been the details of a life well lived together." They sat there in the line shack, 2 people who were no longer young but whose love had only grown stronger with time. Outside, snow began to fall, echoing that long-ago storm. But inside, wrapped in the same blanket that had kept them alive 25 years ago, Tom and Tessa were warm and safe and together. Eventually, they returned to the ranch, to their home and their family. Life continued its steady march forward. Daniel sent letters from his adventures with the Rangers, tales of outlaws caught and dangers faced. Rose's dressmaking empire grew, Teddy's herd prospered, and grandchildren continued to arrive, filling the ranch with laughter and chaos. Tom and Tessa aged gracefully, their hair turning silver, their faces gaining lines that spoke of years of laughter and love. Tom's hands grew arthritic from decades of hard work, and Tessa's eyes grew weak from countless hours of sewing in lamplight. But they remained devoted to each other, as much in love in their 60s as they had been in their 20s. One evening, as they sat on their porch watching the sunset, Tom turned to Tessa with a serious expression. "What is it?" Tessa asked, concerned by his look. "I have been thinking," Tom said slowly, "about that night in the snow, about how close I came to riding right past you. If dust had not shied, if I had been looking a different direction, if the snow had covered you just a few minutes earlier. I would have lost you before I ever found you." "But you did not," Tessa said firmly. "You found me, Tom. Against all odds, in the middle of a blizzard, you found me. And I have spent every day since then grateful for that miracle." "I am the one who should be grateful," Tom said. "You made my life worth living, Tessa. Before you, I was just going through the motions. Working, eating, sleeping, with no real purpose beyond survival. You gave me a reason to dream, to hope, to build something that would last. We built it together," Tessa reminded him. "Everything we have, we made together." Tom nodded, his eyes bright with emotion. "Together, that is the key word, is it not? We have been together through everything. Every triumph, every setback, every joy, every sorrow, together. And we always will be," Tessa said. "No matter what comes, we face it together." As the sun finally slipped below the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant shades of red and gold, Tom pulled Tessa close and kissed her forehead. "I love you, Tessa Vance, more than words can say. I love you too, Tom Vance, more than you will ever know." The years continued to pass, as years do. Tom and Tessa celebrated their 30th anniversary, then their 35th. They became great-grandparents, marveling at how their family had grown from two desperate souls in a snowstorm to a thriving dynasty. The ranch was now in its third generation, with Teddy's oldest son showing all the signs of being a natural rancher. They made plans to celebrate their 40th anniversary with a huge party, inviting everyone they had ever known. But fate had other plans. Tom fell ill the winter before the anniversary, a persistent cough that would not go away. The doctor diagnosed pneumonia, and though Tom fought it with the same determination he had shown in everything else in his life, his body was old and tired. Tessa sat beside his bed day and night, holding his hand and telling him stories of their life together. She reminded him of that first night in the lined shack, of their wedding day, of the births of their children, of all the beautiful moments they had shared. Tom listened, his eyes fixed on her face, a small smile on his lips. "No regrets," he whispered one night. "Not a single one." "Me neither," Tessa said through her tears. "Except that I wish we had more time." "We had a lifetime," Tom said. "A beautiful, full lifetime. More than I ever dreamed of having, because of you, because of us," Tessa corrected. "Always us." Tom squeezed her hand weakly. "Promise me something, anything. Promise me you will keep living. Not just surviving, but really living. Find joy. Spend time with the children and grandchildren. Do not let my death be the end of your story." "How can I live without you?" Tessa asked, the tears flowing freely now. "The same way I would have lived without you if I had never found you in that snow," Tom said. "You would have managed, but it would have been half a life. I am asking you to live a full life, even without me. For me, please." "I promise," Tessa whispered. "But know that every moment without you will be colored by your absence." "That is love," Tom said simply. "And I would not have it any other way." He passed peacefully 2 days later, with Tessa holding his hand and all their children gathered around. His last words were, "I love you," spoken so softly that only Tessa heard them. And then he was gone, the man who had saved her life and made her whole, the love of her life and her truest friend. The funeral was attended by what seemed like half of Texas. Tom had touched so many lives over the years, had helped so many people, had been a friend and mentor to countless others. As Tessa stood beside his grave, listening to the preacher talk about Tom's good works and kind heart, she thought about the man only she had truly known. The man who sang off key to their babies. The man who brought her wildflowers for no reason. The man who held her during thunderstorms because he knew they frightened her. The man who had seen her at her absolute lowest and had chosen to lift her up instead of walking away. After the funeral, After the casseroles and condolences and well-meaning advice, Tessa found herself alone for the first time in nearly 40 years. The house felt too big, too empty, too quiet without Tom's presence. She wandered from room to room, seeing him everywhere. His hat hanging by the door, his boots on the porch, his chair at the kitchen table. She kept her promise to Tom, though. She did not give up on life. She continued to work with Rose on dress designs, though her eyes made it hard to sew now. She spent time with her grandchildren and great-grandchildren, telling them stories about their grandfather and the legacy he had built. She worked in her garden, finding peace in the cycle of planting and growing and harvesting. But every evening, she would sit on the porch, in the chair beside the one that had been Tom's, and she would talk to him. She would tell him about her day, about the children, about the small joys and sorrows of life. And sometimes, when the wind blew just right, she could almost feel him there beside her. 2 years after Tom's death, on a cold February morning, Tessa woke to find snow falling outside her window. It was the first real snow Johnson City had seen since that blizzard 42 years ago. Tessa rose and dressed warmly, then walked out into the white landscape. Her children tried to stop her, worried about the cold and her age, but Tessa insisted. She walked to the spot where the old line shack had been. It had been torn down years ago, but Tessa knew exactly where it had stood. She stood there in the falling snow, remembering the desperate girl she had been, remembering the kind man who had saved her, remembering the life they had built together. "I did it, Tom," she said aloud to the falling snow. "I kept living just like I promised, but I am ready now. Ready to see you again." Teddy found her there an hour later, sitting peacefully in the snow, a small smile on her face. The doctor said it was her heart, that it had simply stopped, but Tessa's children knew better. They knew that their mother had finally gone to be with their father, that she had waited until she was sure they would all be all right, and then she had let go. They buried her next to Tom, under the old oak tree that overlooked their ranch. Her headstone was simple: Tessa Cole Vance, beloved wife, mother, and grandmother, and underneath, words that Tom himself had once spoken: "You have me." The ranch continued to thrive, passed down through the generations. Teddy's son took over after him, and his son after that. Rose's dressmaking business became a fashion house that still operates today, its designs still based on the patterns Tessa created. Daniel retired from the Rangers and wrote a book about his parents' love story that became a bestseller. And every winter, when the first snow falls, the Vance family gathers at the ranch to remember Tom and Tessa, and to tell the story of how a cowboy shared his blanket in the snow with a dying girl, and how that simple act of kindness blossomed into a love that lasted a lifetime and beyond. The old blanket, the one Tom had kept all those years, was preserved and passed down through the family. It hangs now in a place of honor in the ranch house, a tangible reminder of where it all began. Sometimes, late at night, if you listen carefully, you can almost hear the echo of two voices in the darkness, one saying, "I have nothing," and the other replying, "You have me." And in the end, that was all they ever needed: each other, a shared blanket, and a love strong enough to weather any storm.